Hello and welcome to a friendly chat. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subgenres of science fiction, which is the post-apocalyptic sort of movie, television, book, story. I'm mainly going to go with movies here because more people have probably seen the films than read the books. But yeah, it's one of those things that I don't know, I seem to really get drawn to, and I don't know what that says about me, whether I secretly want society to fall, which I don't, because I don't think I'm going to do too well in the post-apocalyptic wasteland. But but yeah, it's always been fascinating, and it doesn't matter what the apocalypse was, whether it was war-related, economic, whether it's a plague or something like that. I've always been fascinated by it, and I think what it is whether humanity can get back together after being scattered, and whether we can exist as a species again after everything's been taken away from us. I think it's that hope that's in there. So I always find it really interesting, and I'm going to talk about a few different ones today. And those who can see behind me, one of my favorite franchises is Mad Max, being Australian. But but yeah, it's I always find it fascinating, the storytelling and the characters involved. So yeah, join me on this journey as we look into some of fiction's more interesting and diabolical situations as the world ends and humanity tries to pull itself back out of the ashes.
And now the news. Don't touch that dial.
I basically give credit to a cartoon series for my appreciation of post-apocalyptic. And that series was called Thunder the Barbarian, which came out in about 1980, 81, I think, about here. And it starts in the far off future of 1994, where a rogue planet sort of goes between the moon and the Earth, and the moon's cracked in half, and it just completely decimates the planet. And then in the sort of surviving people that managed to get through the tidal waves and earthquakes and the planet being just absolutely smashed. Um, you've got like wizards and super scientists and monsters and stuff like that. It's really cool. So Thunder is like basically like a Conan pastiche. I have the DVD here too, which I really, really like. Has sort of a lightsaber weapon called the Sun Sword, and he hangs out with Uklo the Mock, who's like a Chewbacca sort of character, and Princess Ariel, who is has really, really powerful psychic powers. And yeah, they just basically just travel around on horseback, helping civilians against monsters and super scientists and evil wizards and stuff like that. And it is so much fun. I rewatched this recently because I hadn't seen it for quite a while, and just the swagger that the characters have. Like Oogla just grunts and stuff and smashes things, and Ariel is very, very smart, and she recognizes old tech and things like that. Thunder just doesn't. He's just he's not like a stupid brute. Like he's intelligent, but he is just basically like one of the best lines is they're on a sort of a bridge, and Ariel's like going, we need to get out of here, and the baddies are coming, and Thunder's just going, I can take them. There can't be more than 50. And it's like, oh, tough guy. Great stuff. But yeah, but it's the planet is full of you'll see like a busted old helicopter or like a cruise ship that's on its side and rusted, and that's where the baddies are living and stuff like that. Like it's got that whole like there was an awesome episode where they were after the Icemen. The bad guys were after the Icemen, and the Icemen were actually three NASA scientists that were in suspended animation cryogenics, and I was like, that's so cool. Just the Icemen. Of course, then it was like, we want you to build a robot, and it's like, just because they work for NASA doesn't mean they're engineers as well. They could have been just mathematicians or physicists. But it's a cartoon, and scientists can do anything in cartoons. So it's just like TV shows. But yeah, Thunder the Barbarian. It was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, society had fallen majorly, but there were still heroes to help protect the citizens and the normal people from monsters and stuff. So that was really cool. Yeah, and he had lots of light. But yeah, but I give this credit to my appreciation for post-apocalyptic because I was really young when this came out, and I just liked it. I like the concept of just like a barbarian, a psychic, you know, female warrior, and a Chewbacca kind of pastiche, just going around just smashing bad guys, and it was like, yeah. So yeah, that was basically my foray into the post-apocalyptic genre. And if you haven't seen Thunder the Barbarian, look, I'll say it has probably dated, but I give it a pass because I was, alive when it came out, and I watched it when it came out. So, but yeah, Thunder the Barbarian is just good fun. It's good, just good, clean fun. Salute of the Jugger is a very underrated movie. It was basically it was made in Australia. It was a really interesting film. Stars Rorke Howard, Joan Chen, and Vincent D'Onofrio. And basically, it's about a sport that is played in the wastelands by groups called Juggers, and it's a very violent sport where players, they have like weapons that they use, and the whole point is to basically, instead of having a ball, it's a skull of a dog, and you have to get the skull to the opponent's sort of side and put it on a post to basically score points. And it's really fascinating because once again, it's about the society, and the Juggers go from town to town challenging the local players, and there is an actual league, like an actual professional league in one of the largest sort of enclaves, and Rourke Howard's character used to play there, and he'd been basically excommunicated from them. So he's trying to build up his reputation again, so he can challenge the professional league, so he can get back in again. And it's a really fascinating sort of movie series. I really do recommend it, but if you can find it, make sure you get the actual Australian cut or probably the European cut, because the American cut ends early, and it ends like basically like, yeah, it's happy, and it's not happy. But you get that extra bit, and it's more. It does come across as a bit of a bummer, but it is more in line with the actual feeling of the film. So, you will probably go, oh yeah, that does make a lot more sense that this happened. Uh, I think in America it was called Blood of Heroes, or The Blood of Heroes. But yes, Salute of the Jugger is as far as I'm concerned, the proper name of it. Um, and it is a really, really good film. Like Rourke Howes, once again, he's just smashing out of the park. D'Onofrio is fantastic. Joan Chen's always great too. So it's a really good it's a sports movie as well as a post-apocalyptic film. So you've got a whole bunch of different. Oh yeah, Delroy Lindo's in it too. He's always great. So yeah, I really do recommend this film. One of I can't remember the actor's name though, but Australians of my vintage will will recognize, sorry, one of the guys in the enclave at the end as a Bo from the Bo Repairs ads back in the 80s and early 90s. But yeah, Salute to the Jugger was a really interesting one because I think it was. I'm gonna blame Cooper Petey, but it was probably around that area. I'll see if I can find where it was filmed. But it's because it's so desolate. It's yeah, you're gonna want to have a bottle of water near you while watching it because you're gonna get parched. It is one of those sorts of films where you're just like, oh God, how can people live like this? But that's also the fascinating point is, yeah, people live like this in this world, and yeah, it's just rather cool. So yeah, like any sort of sport, the players have different positions. Joan Chen, because she's small and fast, um, she's called, I believe, the Quick, and yeah, she's unarmed, but she gets the skull, gets it on the opposition's post, and so yeah, that's her position. And then you've got like defenders and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's one of those movies, as I said, it's grossly underrated. It came out in, I think, 89 or so, 89, 90. 1999. There we go, and it was 1990 in the US. But I remember when it came out in the video stores because it had one of those embossed covers, like it was a large format clamshell case in the boss cover and had like fists on it or something like that. It was like really full on. But really do recommend it. And as I said, try if you're going to find it. I'm not too sure where it's streaming, but hopefully you can get the extended cut. The proper cut's 104 minutes as opposed to 90 minutes. So you're missing 14 minutes of story there, which is significant really. But yeah, so Salute to the Jugger. That's just a really, yeah, as I said, it's not only post-apocalyptic, it's also a sports movie. So if you like sports movies, check out Salute to the Jugger. I do recommend that one. So one of the interesting things that comes out of Salute to the Jugger is that Australia has a Jugger League where you can actually play the game, which is kind of fascinating because even though it's very violent in the film, it's quite safe. I mean, they instead of swinging like a metal chain and hooks and stuff like that, it's just plastic and lots of foam and stuff like that. So you can't get hurt. Well, not really majorly. Like it's still a bit of impact, but yeah, it's kind of fun to watch. One of the guys from the Brisbane League, Simon, who's actually his picture is in the photo that I'm going to post at the end of this bit. I've known him for a long time, and he loves it. He's just like, oh yeah, this is a great concept. We're gonna play Jugger, and I was like, what, like add a salute to the Jugger? And he goes, yeah. I was like, okay, um, but yeah, it's really fun. It's yeah, look, as I said, you get people get into it, but they no one gets hurt. But but yeah, most of the states in Australia have a team or a local club. So yeah, Brisbane, Canberra, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth. Then in New South Wales, Newcastle has a club, and in Queensland, Toowoomba and Gympie have a club too. So it's kind of cool. So yeah, I'll put a link in the description there. Just you can see some video of the teams playing and that. Yeah, so yeah, just another thing that comes out of this. But yeah, it was never in a million years thought that this would ever be a thing, but it is. So yeah, some fans of this movie that I keep saying is very underrated. Enjoyed the concept of the sport and then turned the sport into an actual sport. So yes, Jugger is played in Australia. There is a league, a Jugger League. So yeah, interesting stuff. All right, going for a trifecta in this one. We're going for the Omega Man, which also had The Last Man on Earth, which was from 1964. Omega Man was from 1970 something, sorry, 71. 1971 was the Omega Man, and then of course there was the Will Smith I'm Legend in 2007. All the same story, all different interpretations of that story, and not really any of them got it right. But from the book, from Richard Matheson's book, which was I Am Legend. But regardless of it not being a perfect adaptation in any form, they're interesting films. I personally like the Omega Man the most because it was the one I saw first. And Charlton Heston as Robert Neville, basically driving around in a band in Las Vegas, not Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and dealing with, and then at night dealing with the creatures that have survived is more interesting than the other ones. You do have, mind you, with the Last Man on Earth, you do have Vincent Price as the Neville character, and he is absolutely magnificent in it. I think what hurts the Will Smith one the most is the CGI is aged terribly and it aged very quickly. But worse than that is the ending they gave it is just dreadful. But the alternate ending is absolutely brilliant. And if you're going to watch the Will Smith one, and if you haven't already seen it, and you feel like rewatching it if you have, Watch the alternate cut if you haven't watched the alternate cut, because it makes more sense. It's the one they put in there was dumb. I'm like, what are you doing? Um, so yeah, but once the and it kind of almost skirts what the story is about, and I really don't want to mention what the story is about because I recommend reading the book. The book is very good, and in the book, it's basically the vampires. In the Will Smith one, they're sort of some weird creature thing. I don't know what they are. They're sort of almost zombies. They're in the Omega Man, but more ghouls than zombies. But yeah, it's just a great tale of a person who's alone dealing with something that's way, no one should really have to deal with, like being the last person alive that as far as they know, and just the horror that goes with being lonely when you know you're alone and there's no one, you can't talk to anyone. The Will Smith one does it very well, I will give it that. Like what he does to keep occupied during the day, like going to the DVD store and renting a DVD and setting up mannequins and sort of interacting. And the dog, has a dog, and that is one of the most heartbreaking things in that film. But and playing golf off the wing of a SR-71 on the bridge of the USS Intrepid, which yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm sort of like, what are you doing? Don't damage that plane. Not that there's anything left to care about, but I still, I know part of me is like going, come on, that's a museum. You're defiling there with a golf. Well, anyway, um, but I do recommend. Honestly, it's almost fun watching all three of them just for the comparison. If you haven't done that, but I do recommend a Mega Man if you haven't seen it. One of the other channels that I sort of take part in every now and then, we do rewatches of movies, and I will put the link down there too because we did do the. I don't know if I was actually on the panel for that one or I was just in the chat, but I think I was in the chat of that one. But but yeah, they basically you watch your own copy and you listen to the commentary from the channel, and it's very 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 cool. So that's yeah, Pete Max rewatch. I'll put a link down in the chat anyway, in the description. But I do recommend the Omega Man. It's 1971, but it's aged incredibly well. It really has. It doesn't have to rely on stupid CGI and stuff like that. And I'm not having a go at the 2007, but the CGI had aged badly. I think if they had practical creatures or just had people in makeup, which I think they originally did, and then they got screamed at by the studio and going, no, make it CGI, it would have been way better because they don't look real, like just at all. And that's kind of irritating. It's like Mummy, Scorpion King sort of stuff where you just go, yeah, that looks like PlayStation special effects, not really, Terminator 2 special effects or even The Abyss, where you just go, yeah, that looks really cool. It kind of just looks not embarrassing, but you sort of go, I know what you're trying to do, but it's not really cutting it for me. But honestly, a Mega Man, don't have to worry about that. It's really, really neat. And Last Man on Earth is really great too. Vincent Price, who doesn't love Vincent Price? So yeah, this one's a trifecta of the same story, but just different interpretations. But yes, Last Man on Earth, the Omega Man, I Am Legend, and I do recommend the book. It's not a very big book. It's Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. It's a good short story, and you get the point of it because they explain it to you. And honestly, when for those who don't know what the actual I Am Legend is about, and I don't mean it's just Robert Neville versus vampires. I mean that statement, I Am Legend. It's a great reveal, and it's really worth finding that out. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend those for the post-apocalyptic genre. So I'm going with three movies here that have very similar look, not necessarily the same story, but just the whatever the apocalypse was, it is just absolutely just washed out like almost color from it. They're very gray and they're very just yeah, it's just really depressing sort of world. So the colors are very muted in these films. First one is The Book of Eli, starring Denzel Washington, Gary Oldman, Ray Stevenson, I think Mila Kunis. Um, and basically it's about a guy he's just traveling across the country, but he needs to get to a place where he can get a book basically saved and potentially republished. And he's heard that there's a place that is basically like a printer that will print books and get them back out there into the population. And he has a book, and it's like potentially the last of its kind, and it's important. He believes this book has the potential to basically bring people together and save the world. I'm not going to go into what the book is if you haven't seen this movie, because you can probably guess what the book is, but the twist of what the book is even more interesting. Very, very cool. It's one of those movies that when you watch it and the twist is revealed, you'll be like, wait, what? Huh? And then, but then if you rewatch it, you'll be able to spot things and go, ah, clever. So yeah, it's a very neat movie. Denzel Washington, of course, just kills it. I mean, he doesn't phone anything in. He's just one of those actors that's just always like 100%, 100%, 100%. So yeah, really, really cool film. Lots of good action in it. Lots of, he's dealing with raiders and nasty people and stuff like that. Gary Oldman's great as a villain. Ray Stevenson's great as, I think he's the villain's right-hand man, but Ray Stevenson's always great too. Titus Pullo, toughest guy ever on television. And yeah, fantastic stuff. The next one is the Road, which has Viggo Mortensen. Basically about a man and his son traveling across the country in the apocalypse. They don't go too much into what caused the apocalypse, but it seems like vegetation has been decimated. Everything's like ash and horrible, and it's nasty. And basically, the whatever's left of humanity isn't really nice. And yeah, so Viggo Mortensen, he knows he's got like a cough, and he knows that he's sick, and he's got that fear of what will happen to his son if he dies, because he's already lost his wife. And it's like, it's got that, it's, look, I will warn you, it's not a fun film. It is quite depressing, and not just the story, but just the look of the thing. You're like, wow, this is just messed up. And the third one is The Day, which almost could fit in the same universe as The Road, because it's got a very similar vibe to it. It's got that washed out grey look, similar, very ashy sort of apocalypse. And this time around, it's a group of people that sort of find a house that's full of tinned food, and they're like, oh my God, we've hit the mother lode. And it's a trap, because cannibals. Yay. Can't have an apocalypse without cannibals, can you? So yeah, but those three are really, really interesting for different feels. But also just once again, it's that whole, well, not just good versus evil. It's that, how far will humanity descend? Like Gary Oldman wants the book because he believes the book is power, and he wants more power, whereas Denzel's basically wants the power to go to the people, because he's magnanimous and heroic. So you've got those sort of archetypes, which are really, really cool. And once again, you got the love of a parent that cares about his the child, and it's like he'll do anything for his child, but he still has that fear of what will happen to his child if he dies. And once again, the day is like, just people banding together against trying to stay alive, and then realizing that now they got to deal with something worse, as humanity at its worst. But all very interesting films, and I said they're not necessarily fun ones, but they do have a similar vibe, and yeah, they're quite interesting. I'm just going to cram a couple more together. Then they're not connected in any way, but I'll probably get some flack for mentioning these films. But you know what, they do work in the genre, and that is The Postman, Waterworld, and Steel Dawn. Now, as I said, not connected in any way. Only put Postman and Waterworld together because of Costner and Costner and Patrick Swayze. Yeah, let's just put them together as well. So Postman is an interesting film. Waterworld, when I must admit I wasn't a big fan of Waterworld when it came out. I just felt like it was Mad Max on jet skis. But I rewatched it a few years ago. It was like a new cut of it. I was like, this isn't too bad. Like the math for me doesn't work at all. Like the amount of landmass that is completely covered in water. I'm like, no, I can't accept that. But in this universe, it does, whatever. So I'll accept that. What I did like about, I was going to say Mad Max, Waterworld, is that the Mariner is not really, he's not a hero in the sense that he deliberately goes out of his way to do things that's heroic. He's more like, I just want to be left alone, leave me alone. And in that sense, he's very much like Max Rotowski from Mad Max. But I'll talk about Max in a minute. But yeah, there's some great scenes in Waterworld, like the scene where he actually basically goes underwater and does a deep dive, and you can see like the submarine on top of like a skyscraper underwater and stuff like that, and things like that were really cool. I must admit, I like the beginning of it where the universal symbol, like the poles shrink and then the land masses shrink, and then it was like completely covered in water. That was neat. So yeah, that movie has grown on me. Postman was kind of interesting too. I think it was based on a novel. I'm not 100% sure on that. I should check. But Costner's character in it, even though he is definitely an adult, he comes across as a little bit not immature in the sense that he's like, but just he does. I think his way of dealing with society is not quite as mature. There's a really fun scene when he. Oh yeah, David Brin wrote it. There you go. Oh wow, I didn't know David Brin wrote that. There's a scene early on where he finds like a burnt out television and he sort of sits down in front of it and finds like a TV guide and is like, let's see what's on television tonight, and sort of mucking around like that. And I think he gets spooked by a deer, and there's an old cigarette machine behind him and knocks it over and finds like some packets of cigarettes and he goes, oh my God, I'm rich. And I was like, stuff like that was really fun. But yeah, there is that sort of thing. Like he sort of finds an old post truck and he takes like the satchel of letters and sort of uses that as an excuse to try and get into a town that won't let him in otherwise. And I thought that, so he's a little bit out for himself, but yeah, it was fascinating sort of way it sort of escalates from that of them dealing with the stronger sort of societies that are sort of trying to push everyone down and take control, which is, kind of an interesting facet of post-apocalyptic stuff where you've got like the warlords, for lack of a better term, versus real society. And it's kind of like, that's the fascinating thing about this sort of genre of like, how does humanity react? Do they try to bring back a civil society, or do they just go only the strong survive and the weak will be crushed under our boot? And that's kind of that's kind of where I find it interesting to see. Well, how that escalates, and do the people who are under the boot hill go, no more, I'm done with this, and fight back? So kind of interesting stuff. Still Dawn is very underrated movie. It came in at 87, which I think he did after he did Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze. It's got Brian James from Blade Runner. It's got Anthony Zerber. I don't know how to pronounce his surname. He was in the Mega Man. He was the villain. And yeah, it's basically about a group of like a small sort of collective that's getting attacked by raiders who basically want their water because water is an important resource. And Patrick Swayze, who is the nomad, he basically is a wandering samurai type who's like a sword for hire, and he's basically like, they say, can you protect our water from these people? And he's like, sure, I can do that. I'm Patrick Swayze, I'm Peace Ways, and it's a very underrated film, but it's kind of neat too. So I do recommend Still Dawn as well if you have a chance to track that one down. All right, I'm going to cram another couple together before doing the last sort of section of this. So I'm going a couple. One's environmental, one's war, one is dragons, and the other is the future. So which was also war related. So we've got Snowpiercer, Dread, Rain of Fire, and one of my favorites, absolutely, which is Logan's Run. So so we'll go through those. Snowpiercer is fascinating, and there's a TV series on it. Unfortunately, it just got cancelled, even though they're going to pick it up for a fourth season, where basically the temperature of the planet has just dropped radically, and a super train was built with basically a perpetual engine that just does not stop. And like everything, it's a class system train. So there's first class, second class, third class. However, before the train was launched, a bunch of just basically the poor charged the train and they got into the back sort of carriages. And so resource-wise, the train is sort of at its maximum. And basically the people at the back, they can work and that, but at the end of the day, they don't really want them to be there. So the movie has Chris Evans in it. He's great as your protagonist. The TV series is really fascinating too because there's been a murder and one of the people in the back of the train was a homicide detective, so they sort of bring him forward to solve the murder. But yeah, it's based on a French, I believe, comic book series. And it's very fascinating. But the whole class stuff really works well. It's just, you just hate some of the people because it is absolutely horrible. But yes, so Snowpiercer is fascinating. Really good TV series too, even though, as I said, it got cancelled. But I do recommend checking it out. Check out both the movie and the TV series, honestly, because they have different elements to them. But yeah, well worth it. Dread. Basically, honestly, I've talked about this movie before, but America is a wasteland, a cursed earth. And basically, yeah, the Mega City 1 is from, I think they said it was from Boston to DC or something like that, incorporates New York City and a whole bunch of it. It's pretty much just concrete all the way across, and it's just choking under the amount of people that are crammed into this city. And the only thing that keeps the city going are judges, which are basically cops. And Dredd is like one of the toughest that exists in Mega City 1. And it's a fun movie, it really is. And the thing about it is, like, they did Judge Dredd back in '96, I believe it was, with Stallone. Visually, closer to the comics, but intent-wise, nowhere near. Whereas this one is, it's you can tell it's a smaller film, it's cheaper and all that, but intent, perfect. Visual, if you could merge the two, it would be just the absolute perfect Judge Dredd movie experience from 2000 AD. But yeah, and the other thing I love about it is, as I said, it's a small film. So the plot is a small plot. It's not about the whole weight of Mega City 1 is on Dredd's shoulders and he has to deal with it. No, it's just a drug bust, and things get out of hand. So it's just a cop movie. It's good, and it's a good cop movie too. So Dredd's fantastic. Judge Anderson from the PSI division, she's introduced in this movie. Awesome, really well done. It's got Lena Headey. Just screwed that one up. Who people remember as from Game of Thrones. I'll remember her from Terminator. Sarah Connor Chronicles. She played Sarah Connor. She's great. She's awesome. She's really good. She's terrifying in it. And Avon Barksdale from The Wire. Yay, isn't it too? Unfortunately, he's just like a punk. And it's like, come on, this is Avon Barksdale. But he's just one of the lesser sort of members of the Marmar clan. But yeah, absolutely fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really good. It is post-apocalyptic, but it falls more into dystopian, but society has come back. It's just very brutal. but really good film. Carl Urban is magnificent as Dredd. Uh, right, this one, this movie's crazy. Rain of Fire. Dragons have caused the apocalypse. But it is still ridiculously entertaining. This is probably, if I had a top 100 of post-apocalyptic movies, this would probably be 100. Mainly just because dragons just don't work for me. But I'm picking different styles of apocalypses here, so it's like dragons. Um, but good God, Matthew McConaughey, all right, dragons, 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 and Christian Bale, just great stuff. Fantastic. It's full on action. You've got helicopters versus dragons. You've got bloody craziness. Gerald Butler's in there. Isabella Scoruppo. I can't pronounce her name. She was, I believe, I think she was the Bond girl from GoldenEye. I think. Yes, she was. She was Natalia. Um, and but yeah, it is very fun. When I first saw it though, it didn't have the prologue. It just starts with them sort of the apocalypse has happened, and without the prologue, it made no sense. So congratulations to the theatre that played that. But regardless of that, it is look, it is a very fun film. As I said, it's tanks versus dragons, helicopters versus dragons, people jumping out of helicopters and halo jumping versus dragons. Um, Matthew McConaughey versus dragons. It's and Christian Bale versus dragons. Um, yeah, it's fun. If you like dragons and you want to see an apocalyptic movie of military versus dragons, check it out. It is kind of fun. It's very silly in my opinion, but look, it was entertaining. I will give it that. And honestly, at the bare minimum of cinema, that's what I want. I want to be entertained, and I was. And Logan's Run, it is the future. Um, Society has returned to an extent, but once again, this is pure dystopian. Uh, they live in a city. It's self-contained. No one goes outside. No one knows why they can't go outside, but they just don't go outside. They're told that basically everything's terrible out there and it will kill you. And to keep population under control, you basically have a very finite life. And once you hit that age, you go to carousel to renew, which is basically you just go get killed. Humans have like this little crystal embedded in the hand, which is red when it starts blinking. That means you have to go down to carousel to be renewed, and you die. Some people try to run though, and basically Logan and his friend, oh God, I can't remember his friend's name, Frank or Francis? I think it's Francis. He's played by Richard Jordan. They basically they're the cops, and they're called the Sandmen, and they go chasing them down. Except they don't just like execute people; they torment them by basically going, "Run, runner," and then chase them down and shoot them. So yes, Logan's Run, ridiculously fun. Basically, it is an undercover mission for Logan, who basically the upper bosses tell him to try to infiltrate the people that are trying to hide the runners and get the runners running, and find out where they are going or where they want to go, and then basically dispatch it all. So basically they set him up to have to run by modifying his crystal. And he sort of said, "Oh, will I get my years back?" But they don't answer that question. But yes, and of course, once he gets outside, his crystal doesn't work anymore. But society, the world is fine. It's just decimated. But there's plant life and animals and all sorts of good stuff. So it's like people can still live. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. It sort of goes into a lot of detail of who's in charge, and are they just keeping the narrative going because they just want power to keep the power over the people? But fascinating film, really good, completely different from the book in many senses. But the book's very fun too. But Logan's Run is a good post-apocalyptic dystopian movie as well. And everyone knew this was coming. Mad Max. I just love this trilogy. Well, 4 movies now, I suppose. But yeah, it's funny to keep remembering there's 4 of them now. And there's going to be a Furiosa prequel at some point too. But Mad Max, as an Australian, yeah, it's one of those sorts of institutions really of Australian cinema. It's a big one. Um, Interesting set of films. For the longest time, I'd only seen 2 and 3. I didn't see the original Mad Max for a while. Um, I love Mad Max 2 though. It's one of my favorite. It's probably tippy top of my post-apocalyptic favorites. It's like just damn near perfect. Um, but yeah, Mad Max is an interesting one because it's society has not quite fallen yet, but it's on its way. It's like the apocalypse has happened and it's coming in and it's coming in and it's coming in. It just hasn't quite reached them yet. But society is falling. Like there's gangs and motorcycle gangs and stuff like that, and things are horrible. And Max is a police officer, and it's but yeah, but it gets to a point where even Max is just like, I've had a gutful of this. I'm going. Takes off with his wife and newborn son. But, of course, stuff just can't be let go and stuff happens. And, of course, then Max goes crazy because of what happens to his family. And, yeah, it turns into a revenge film like Mad Max 1. But one of my favorite screen vehicles of all is the Last of the V8 Interceptors. It's just a beastly vehicle. Yeah, just absolutely. Mad Max itself is an interesting film. As I said, it becomes a revenge film, and then sort of, you don't know what's going to happen next. And then 3 years later, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior comes out. Only called The Road Warrior in the States because they hadn't seen the first movie, so they went, well, why do we call this Mad Max 2? Just call it The Road Warrior. And if you were lucky to see it in America, it was dubbed because apparently the Australian accent was too thick or too hard to understand, and they couldn't understand the by Jesus, by Jingo, by crikeys. And that's not in there at all. I just felt like saying that. But but yeah, weird. But regardless of that, Mad Max 2, oh, so good. You've got the Lord Humongous, the Ayatollah of rock and roller, where I love that line, and good old Chris Jericho for using it. But yeah, you've got just a real big gang of monsters that basically want a fuel refining facility out in the middle of the desert, and they just want the gasoline. But and yeah, sort of Max is sort of involved rudimentarily. The thing about Max is too, especially in Mad Max 2 and 3 and Beyond Thunderdome, he really is not a hero. He doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to get involved. He wants to be left alone. He wants his property, and that's it. Leave me alone. And he gets forced into becoming the hero by elements outside his control. And, he does step up and he does it, but it never really ends well for him. But Mad Max 2 is fantastic for that, and so is Thunderdome. Thunderdome's very underrated. A lot of people don't like it. I say give it another go. Really give it another go because it's actually quite fun. There's a little bit of confusion because they've got the same actor from Mad Max 2. So Bruce Spence, who plays the gyro pilot in Mad Max 2, is also the plane pilot in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's not the same character. I thought it for a while it was him, but it wasn't. Also in Mad Max 2, you've got Vernon Wells, who plays basically one of the strangest sort of characters out there. He plays... good God, I just completely blanked on his character's name. Wes. Vernon Wells plays Wes. A lot of people also remember Vernon Wells from Commando, wearing a chainmail shirt and as Bennett. But But Mad Max 2 is just brilliant. It really is. Mad Max 3, as I said, Beyond Thunderdome. My God. I for the longest time I wasn't a huge fan of it. I sort of liked it because it was there, but I didn't love it. As the years have gone on, I really, 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 really like it. Um, of course, you've got Tina Turner, who plays Auntie, and of course sings the epic song "We Don't Need Another Hero," which is one of the best freaking soundtrack songs. Definitely awesome, awesome from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Um, we've also got, who else is in this? I'm trying to remember. Angry Anderson plays, I think it's Iron Bar. He's got this weird sort of thing behind him with a mannequin's face. Um, he's like one of the henchmen. I think Frank Thring, who not a lot of people outside of Australia will know who Frank Thring is, but he's great. Um, and yeah, lots of interesting characters in Bartertown, where Thunderdome happens. But interesting film, and of course, then there's Fury Road, which came out a few years back, which is different because it didn't have Mel Gibson in it. Max was recast, and basically Tom Hardy took over. But it's the same character. He, once again, reluctant hero. He doesn't really want to get involved. He just wants to leave. He wants to get his car back. But yeah, it's a great series of films, and I really love them. I really do. I recommend all of them. I do recommend watching them in order, really. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, continuity-wise, it's a little bit up in the air. Like, especially Thunderdome, there's a lot of elements to it where, like once again, the math doesn't quite work out. Like, where all these kids come from? And you can argue, oh, they were on the plane, but it's like, yeah, but they're all different ages. Like, were some of these kids babies, or were some of these children born after but it's easier not to think about it. And Fury Road, it's hard to work out where it fits into the continuity. But honestly, you just watch them and just enjoy them. That's the easiest way to deal with it. But yeah, the Mad Max series is fantastic. I have like 3 of the cars in the cabinet over there, and one of Max's badges, which has "Maintain Right," which is just like such a fascist thing to put on a cop badge. But regardless, it's like, yeah, it's the apocalypse. You probably need a little bit of hard edge when you're dealing with criminals in the looming apocalypse. But the Last of the Vietnamese have just such a cool car, and absolutely love it. So yes, Mad Max. I'm going to touch on this just lightly. I find it amazing that the young adult sort of books, and from that extension movies, went so deep into post-apocalyptic and dystopian sort of stories, and it was fascinating because it wasn't, you kind of expect like maybe one book to do it, maybe two, but the fact that you had lots of them. Like, you had like the Maze Runner, you had the Divergent series, you had the Hunger Games. It was like Fifth Wave, Mortal Engines, things like that. Was it City of Ember? I think was another one. It was just fascinating, and regardless of how you feel about that, and look, I'm not the demographic for a lot of it because I'm a crotchety and old, but I kind of respect that they sort of went into that genre and just went, hey, kids can read this, yeah, maybe it'll get them into some of the other stuff down the track, but it was kind of interesting. Like, there's good characters in them. There's good stories. I haven't read any of those books. I have seen some of the movies. Haven't seen all of them in any of those franchises. Well, Fifth Wave was just a single movie, but I did see that one. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that they've just really just went, hey, look, and you can't even say this going into an untapped market because it's been tapped pretty full on. But on the bright side, they are all kind of different. Like, like you've had, war related, you had biological, I think, with the Maze Runner ones, Mortal Engines, I can't even remember what that was. I think that was another war one. Um, Divergent definitely there was a lot of combat because I think they're in Chicago or what's left of Chicago. I can't really remember, and forgive me for not remembering that. But I know when you see outside the city, there's a lot of bombed out areas and like craters and stuff. So, um, but yeah, it was. I find that kind of interesting that it just seemed like around the same time, and I might be glazing over maybe decade here or maybe even longer, but just all these books just went bang, 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 and it was just like, yeah, post-apocalyptic. We got we got people that have to fight to the death. We've got people who, we've got to see if they can get through a maze just to see if they're worthy enough to do something down the field. I can't even remember what Maze Runner was about. I'm sorry. And another one was about, I don't know, that was a class system thing with the Divergent stuff. I'm terrible with this, but as I said, I am not the demographic. But if you are and you like that stuff, that's cool. But yeah, I just find that interesting that it just seemed like this sort of, you know, time period, just like it wasn't like they threw a whole bunch of stuff to see what stuck. They just went, no, let's go with it. Boom. And I suppose it helped that things like uh, Hunger Games was huge. Like it was really huge as a book series and then as a movie series. But that it probably gave publishers just that sort of rubber stamp just to go, yes, do it, do it, do it, publish it, get it out there. We want that cash. We need the cheddar from the other successful things, and it kind of worked. It really did. I mean, before that, it was like the Harry Potter franchise probably that sort of had. I think they've always been looking for that next sort of lightning in a bottle sort of thing, but post-apocalyptic sort of was the genre, and a lot of people ran with it, so that was kind of fascinating too. I could keep going on and on and on about post-apocalyptic movies, but I'm not going to because I've gone on long enough. But yeah, that's some different sort of films. Like you can shove in the Planet of the Apes movies if you want. You can put in heaps of other movies. Like it's just so many different films set in this genre, based on novels, based on comic books. Um, but but yeah, it's a fascinating, as I said, it's a fascinating sort of genre. Oh, The Stand, of course. I should have talked about The Stand a bit. It doesn't matter. I'll probably do a Stephen King thing somewhere down the track, and I'll talk about The Stand. But yeah, it's a fascinating, as I said, fascinating subgenre of the science fiction sort of genre. And as I said, I don't know whether it says something about me psychologically that I see society for. But as I said in the opening, I think it's more that I want to know that if society took a tumble, we could come back from it, and in some way where it's not completely full of cannibals and executions and murder and horrible stuff, and we actually become civil again. But yeah, I think that's part of it, or it's like just that glimmer of hope that maybe we can come back. But regardless of that, it's post-apocalyptic. Ew, do you like that? Is it a subgenre that you're interested in? Are any of these movies that you enjoyed? Please feel free in the comments to talk about, what ones you like. Did I mention ones that in a way we go, oh, I didn't think of that one, or are there ones that I completely forgot and you went, what about this? And as I said, if I forgot about it, I'm terribly sorry. I was limiting myself, and I was, so I was cramming movies together, going, oh, I'll talk about all these at once, even if they didn't work, like cramming in in Rain of Fire in there. But yeah, so yeah, please feel free in the comments to mention any of these that you like. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider hitting a like, thumbs up, and all that jazz. And yeah, consider subscribing to my channel for more content on movies and comics and television and music and games and all that jazz, all that good stuff that's out there. But until then, anyway, keep on watching, keep on reading, keep on listening, keep on gaming. Keep yourself entertained because there's lots and lots of good stuff out there. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Damn the man! Save the Empire!